Visceral fat, the fat in your belly that you can't see, is deadly. This is part 2 of our series on visceral fat. If you missed part 1, check the link in the description where I discussed what visceral fat actually is and 5 surprising ways it impacts your health. In today's video, I'll reveal the top 5 signs that visceral fat is affecting your health and provide actionable, simple steps that you can take to get rid of it. So stay tuned with me to learn how to protect yourself from this hidden health threat. If this is the first time you've seen me or clicked on one of my videos, I'm Dr. Ashley. I'm a PhD nutritionist, a registered dietitian, a weight loss expert, and the founder of PhD Weight Loss, where we've helped over 7,200 people lose 260,000 pounds across the US. And my goal is to help you get science-backed information you need to actually lose the weight, keep it off, and live the best life possible. Okay, so visceral fat and signs that it's affecting you is number 1, a large waist circumference. If your waist measures more than 40 inches or 102 centimeters for men, or 35 inches, 88 centimeters for women, it's a clear indicator that you've got excess visceral fat, excess belly fat, but even the slightest increase in waist size can be a really big red flag. Research from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute shows that belly fat is a key predictor of visceral fat levels. Quantifying belly fat through CT scan, MRI, or DEXA isn't always feasible. It's the best way to determine how much belly fat you've got, but it's hard for us to get those tests, and sometimes those tests are usually very expensive. Waist circumference can be considered a simple indicator of that belly fat distribution and provides additional information above BMI. BMI shows us nothing in regard to our overall health. So if you go to your physician or healthcare provider and all they talk about is BMI, I suggest that you consider a different healthcare provider that actually measures and looks at the amount of belly fat or visceral fat that you have. A simple at-home test that you could do to determine if you've got this belly fat could be lying flat on the floor, legs straight. If you've got a belly that protrudes upwards where the fat doesn't fall to the sides, then it's an indicator that you've got this visceral fat. There are some cheaper scales that measure visceral fat too. They aren't super accurate, but they can give you a decent idea and let you measure trends of how the visceral fat is either growing or hopefully collapsing. Another sign that the belly fat could be influencing your health is if you have insulin resistance. This visceral fat releases inflammatory substances called cytokines. The main one is interleukin-6, and they interfere with insulin's ability to regulate blood sugar. This leads to metabolic dysfunction, making it harder for your body to process sugars and carbs effectively. A study published in Diabetes Care found that visceral fat is closely associated with insulin resistance and is a precursor to type 2 diabetes. Another sign that it's impacting your health negatively is high blood pressure. Excess belly fat, excess visceral fat puts pressure on your kidneys and other organs, leading to higher blood pressure. This pressure can strain your cardiovascular system, increasing the risk of heart disease. A study in Hypertension Journal noted a strong correlation between this visceral fat and hypertension. With PhD clients, I can bet that a guy who comes in who has fat in the belly, chest, and face will have high blood pressure and sleep apnea. If this sounds like you, when you drop the belly fat, your high blood pressure and sleep apnea will improve or go away entirely, usually within just a number of weeks. Sign number 4 that the belly fat is negatively impacting your health is elevated LDL. Visceral fat affects liver function, and it leads to an increase in that bad LDL cholesterol. This imbalance can clog arteries and lead to cardiovascular problems. Research in the Journal of Clinical Lipidology indicates that high levels of visceral fat are linked to dyslipidemia, which is when your blood lipid levels, your cholesterol levels increase in ways that aren't healthy. So that means your triglycerides go up, LDL goes up, HDL drops down, and this is a major risk factor for cardiovascular disease. And number 5, if you have chronic inflammation, visceral fat releases these pro-inflammatory cytokines. The main one, called interleukin-6. I want you to check out my longer episode if you're interested in learning more on how visceral fat works and how this interleukin-6 works. But it leads to a state of chronic inflammation. This inflammation affects your entire body, contributing to various chronic diseases, including heart disease and cancer. A study that just came out in the Lancet showed that chronic inflammation is a significant health risk associated with visceral fat. So now that you know the signs, I want to talk about how to reduce visceral fat. Tip number 1 is to first focus on your diet. Numerous randomized controlled trials have reported that a low carbohydrate diet or reduced carbohydrate diet doesn't mean you have to be Atkins or carnivore, but it does mean understanding your unique carbohydrate tolerance level. When you eat within that level, effective than low-fat diet in reducing weight, especially during short to intermediate periods. Lower carbohydrate, reduced carbohydrate diet more effectively reduces the visceral fat as well as risk factors for cardiometabolic diseases. So avoiding processed foods, sugars, grains, and alcohol, which can contribute to visceral fat accumulation, is important. Also focusing on adequate protein intake, or you could do a little fasting if you like that. That also effectively reduces visceral fat with favorable metabolic outcomes. When I say adequate protein, I mean you should be consuming about 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound ideal healthy body weight. So again, let's say you weigh 200 pounds and you should be 140 pounds is your ideal healthy weight. Then you're going to take that 140 and you're going to multiply that 0.8, which gives you 112 grams of protein. And then you're going to do that equation again, and you're going to multiply 140 times 1. I can do that math. That's going to give you 140 grams of protein. So each day you want to be consuming a range of 112 to 140 grams, preferably coming from animal protein sources. So tip number 2 is you want to participate in regular movement. Resistance training is number 1 when it comes to staying lean in the belly. Strength training and specific types of cardio have been shown to reduce visceral fat. So I urge you to consider incorporating maybe some high intensity interval training for maximum impact. A study in Obesity Reviews highlights the importance of HIIT, or that high intensity interval training. And again, I have some examples in a longer form episode on what you can do regarding the right type of cardio and resistance training to effectively get rid of that belly fat. If you need specific guidance around the type of movement that's going to be best to promote fat loss, then check out the link in this description where you can get my free guide for effective fat loss exercise guidelines. So it should be in there. Check that out, download it for free, and it will give you an example schedule and strategy and the science behind why you want to focus on specific exercise over others. Okay, tip 3 to reduce this belly fat, get rid of this visceral fat, is to manage stress. Chronic stress increases cortisol levels, promoting visceral fat, belly fat accumulation. So consider using techniques like mindfulness or yoga, deep breathing exercises to help lower stress. I have an entire longer video on the topic of stress if you want to dive deeper into the science, along with helpful suggestions on overcoming stress. So check that out if you're interested in more. Tip number 4 is to get adequate sleep. Poor sleep is linked to weight gain and increased belly fat. You want to aim for about 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep each night, as recommended by the National Sleep Foundation. Good sleep hygiene is crucial for reducing belly fat. Oftentimes, if I'm meeting with a PhD weight loss client and they say, Dr. Ashley, I'm doing everything right, I'm working so hard, I'm eating everything at exactly the right times and the weight is just not dropping off. It's either going to be stress or sleep. And once we find out which one it is and we solve for it, the weight starts to drop off. So it is just as important as what you are eating and when you are eating. Tip number 5 is to stay hydrated. Drink plenty of water. It helps to regulate your metabolism. It can aid in fat loss. I recommend aiming for at least 8 cups of water a day to support your overall health and reduce that belly fat. I've also got an entire longer episode all about hydration if you want to dive deeper into that topic with me. And one important note to consider is often drinking water alone isn't enough to really keep you hydrated. For me, I've got a really high burn rate, which just means I burn through electrolytes like magnesium and potassium really quickly. So if I don't drink a lot of electrolytes with my water, I actually get more dehydrated. I have a headache. I feel spacey. I get flu-like symptoms. So I actually formulated formulated my own electrolyte mix with this in mind to support those of us losing weight or with a higher burn rate like me. And when we're in the process of losing weight, our electrolyte and fluid requirements are uniquely much greater. So if you think electrolytes would benefit you, you might want to check out my Electrolyte Plus mix. It's through my company, Dr. Ashley Wellness, and there's a link in the description with a special discount code for you guys listening to this as well. So there you have it. These are the top 5 signs that visceral fat is affecting your health and the actionable steps you can take to reduce it. Remember that making these changes can significantly improve your overall health and well-being. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to share with those who would also find value in it and subscribe for more health tips. As always, I would love for you to drop your comments below because I want to support you as much as I can, and I look forward to seeing you next time.